Wrestling fans, are you ready? For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
And now, please welcome at this time your hosts, Graham GSM Matthews and RJ Marceau. You're listening to the next era of wrestling radio. This is WrestleRant Radio.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WrestleRant Radio for Thursday, June 13th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm having a great week so far. We got another exclusive interview on the show today, this time with a notable name from the comedy scene, Gabriel Iglesias, which sounds random, but is obviously a well-documented diehard fan of WWE and the most recent host of the WWE Rivals show on A&E that just wrapped up recently. So the interview is from April, and this is kind of like the end of the taped interviews I've had in the last couple of months. Last week was Valhalla. That was also from like March, April. This one was from April. Obviously a little bit delayed now. The show just recently wrapped up on A&E, but I figured we would air the interview here on today's show. Talking about the show and his experience at WrestleMania, and it's just his thoughts on the current, not business model, but the current product of WWE and Triple H running things and stuff like that. I thought it was a very interesting conversation. Obviously, like I said, a notable name from the comedy scene. He's been in several shows as well. Gabriel, Fluffy as you might know him as, is a really cool guy, so I think you'll enjoy our conversation. And then in the back end of the show, per usual, we'll have Mr. Marceau on, breaking down NXT Battleground from this past week, previewing Clash of the Castle coming up this weekend, and then some more contract talk, picking up where we left off last week with an AEW talent that WWE might have interest in, and then a WWE current talent that might be on his way out of the company and AEW bound. So we'll talk all about that here on the show today. Until then, though, new episodes of WrestleRant Radio available every single week and all your usual favorite podcast platforms. Rate the show, review the show, subscribe to the show. Never miss a new episode every single Thursday. Now enjoy my exclusive interview with Mr. Gabriel Iglesias talking WWE Rivals and so much more. Thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
I know you just got back from Mania weekend. I saw you on stage for the 2K24, what was it? Not roundtable, that's what the rival show's about, obviously. But like the showdown, the Superstar Showdown. So just talk about that a little bit, your experience at Mania weekend before we get going here.
Man, first of all, I need to step up my game. I haven't had an Xbox or a PlayStation in so long. I think I was relying on my old school Nintendo 64 skills to to play that game. I had a really good time. It was very different, and it was cool to do something with superstars where I felt like we're all equals in this one. Mm-hmm. It's not it's not some Hollywood event, and it's not some straight wrestling event where it's only wrestling. We're playing video games, and we're all on that same playing field, just trying to have fun.
You talk about not playing games for a while. What was like the last wrestling game that you played where you really felt like you were in your element?
Oh, God, Tecmo Wrestling.
Wow, okay. That's a throwback.
I don't know how old you are, man, but Tecmo Wrestling was the shit back in the day. Tecmo, man. I would always play the pink masked wrestler with the star on his face.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Now that's a deep cut right there. That's a throwback. Obviously the games have evolved quite a bit since then, but no, it was cool to see you on stage for that. You were there all throughout WrestleMania weekend doing the Slammy Awards as well. How was your experience overall at Mania? It kind of had a different vibe to it, obviously. Now they're talking about the Paul Levesque era of WWE and all this other sort of stuff. How was the experience for you being on that end of it?
It was incredible. Let me tell you, I've been going to Mania now for almost 15 years.
Yeah.
And every year, there's been great ones, there's been okay ones, and then there's this one. This has been my favorite Mania.
Wow.
Period. I mean, I felt like there was so many incredible things going on. And usually you got to sit through a few matches that are kind of like, a few storylines that are like, and then, you're only focused on the main event.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this one, man, there was just so much going on where it's like, wow, all the the future rivalries, if you will, are being laid down right now, which I think is great. I'm very much looking forward to this new era. As they say, it's the Paul Levesque era, and I've talked to a lot of the superstars, and there's pros and cons to everything. So because it is new, it's uncharted territory, but kind of familiar, and it's like there's so many changes that have happened from the fact that it went from all Vince, now TKO, all Vince controlling, to now, Triple H, Paul in control. You got the CEO, Mr. Khan. So it's like there's a lot of variables going on. But I think that you're seeing a lot more superstars shining now, whereas I feel like in the past it was very focused on one or two being the anchors. I think now there's so many people that could main event, and that's awesome. Fans want more, they don't want less. And this Mania gave everybody more than what they anticipated. And the fact that they were able to add a level of nostalgia to it, by bringing in Cena and Taker the way that they did at the end, that was just like, are you kidding me?
I think we were
hoping. The only
hoping
thing that could have made it better was if it would have been Stone Cold instead of Taker.
Yeah.
I think I'm not the only one that feels that way, but hey, you can't have everything.
I was literally about to say, I think the only thing that would have improved it, which it's hard to improve it because it was almost a practically perfect match / moment, would have been of some glass shattering. I know you know Stone Cold well. You've been on his podcast before, and that would have been perfect. So, but still, a great moment, a great era indeed. Does it change like your involvement at all as far as from what it was? You mentioned like the new ownership and stuff like that. You were hosting the Slammies, doing the 2K thing. Is it kind of business as usual on your end? Obviously, you're hosting Rivals now too. That's a separate thing, of course. Or has it been kind of the same thing despite the change in ownership? You kind of noticed the same stuff. I know you talked to the superstars from behind the scenes, but as far as your involvement from an on-air perspective, I guess.
From on air, as far as business goes, I'm still approaching it like a fan because I'm still excited to be part of this, and I think that the fact that it's very organic for me. It's very, very organic. Hey, do you want to participate in X, Y, or Z? There's no arm twisting. As a matter of fact, there's been zero arm twisting. Everything they presented, hey, would you like to be part of this or part of that? Yes, 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 and yes. The fact that we're doing this interview right now, I hate doing press, but I can't shut up about wrestling. So yeah, I'm all about it. Someone asked me, what perspective do you bring versus Freddie Prinze, who was the former host?
Yeah.
And I says, well, I think that there comes a point where you do get a little too close to the fire, and you get used to it. You get jaded. And I feel that that's happened to me many times with acting or with even with stand-up. But this, for me, I'm very excited to be part of it. And I feel like with Freddie, he was, he was in the day-to-day. He was one of the writers. He was involved. He's very analytical. And so sometimes it's hard to get back that innocence of just being a fan. And I feel like that's me 100%. So I do understand the way that the magician does the tricks, but I still enjoy the show. So I do miss the before it was sports entertainment vibe and the feel of that. But I still love it. I still like being there. And the fact that I'm not forced to be there, that makes it different. Because as an entertainer, man, we sign up for all these gigs, and sometimes we're having a great time, and sometimes we're stuck in some random city where, like, dude, they don't even have a 7-Eleven, and I'm like, oh my god. But with WWE, every time I've gone there, it's because I want to go, and I can't wait to be involved, and this is just like a second dream come true for me, because I've always wanted to be a wrestler, I've always wanted to be a superstar, but comedy won that fight.
Yeah. And it's not like you're not excelling at that, It's not like you took up this second gig. It's like, oh, it's a bigger dream. No, you're obviously a very, prolific comedian, stand-up actor, stand-up comedian, all this other stuff you got going on. And then you kind of got this going on the side as a wrestling fan, and obviously excelling with this as well as the new host of Rivals. But talking about that, on this roundtable, in addition to yourself, Gabe, you also got Natalya, Kevin Nash, and X-Pac. So you talk about growing up a fan, still being a fan now. How surreal was it for you to kind of be alongside them, picking their brains about some of the most iconic feuds in WWE history?
For me, let me just tell you, before we actually taped the show, we wanted to kind of just, get a vibe for each other. Because I've met all those superstars I've met individually, but I've never spent time with them together.
Mm-hmm.
So to hear to be a fly on the wall and hear their, hear the conversations, both on and off camera. And I wish we could have a separate show of conversations that happen off camera. Because wow. So for me, man, I felt like, man, I felt so privileged to be there, to be part of it, and just excited, man. I'm like, at dinner, I'm sitting there next to Sean. Sorry, we're on a first name basis now. X-Pac, and we were just talking, and aside from the business, we can relate because we're both dog guys. He's got his dogs, I got my dogs, and so we were having these just regular conversations, and it felt good to actually have conversations that weren't wrestling related, just to be normal people. Both of us having, we got our thing, whether it's comedy or whether it's wrestling, but to be relating on something completely different was really, really cool. And I got a chance to get to know him. JBL, I thought was going to be a pill. Turns out JBL and I are a lot more alike than I thought. and we clicked, we laughed, and gave me a big old hug at Mania. Natalia's always been sweet to me. She's always been really, really kind, always a great conversation. We're always talking about her and her dad growing up. So it's nice to have those stories of family and the way that he was brought up in the business. And then, of course, talking to Kofi or talking to Kevin Owens, and even with Cody. So by the way, let me just say, Cody couldn't have been nicer. Like, I cannot believe how grounded he is for where he's at, and it was incredible to see. He not only took the time to it's one thing with me, because I when I meet people, I always feel like I meet the best version of them, because they're just, it's like, oh, they're meeting a celebrity, and so they're smiling, they're happy, but the way that they are with people that that are not connected, because I watch how is he interacting with regular people? Yeah, a guy who's holding a mop, a guy who's plugging something in or getting a camera ready. How is he, with those people? And man, let me tell you, he's a class act all the way around. So I'm super happy for his success. Couldn't happen to a nicer person, and well deserved, by the way.
Yeah, no, obviously you were there for him finishing his story, as we all were in Philly just a couple days ago, and we're just coming off it now, and it was an amazing moment. I mean, kind of going off of that, it's safe to say that even before Cody finished the story and won the championship on Sunday, he was the guy. I mean, I don't know if calling him the Cena of this era is the equivalent or not, because he might be on another level than that at some point, but just, I mean, looking at that, I mean, you talk about the human interaction that he has. He goes around to literally every single person around ringside after every single show that he's on, taking pictures with every single person. I mean, in your opinion, as a lifelong wrestling fan, do you see him as the guy as well in WWE right now going forward?
I do. And you know what? People always love putting titles to things. And that's actually in good company, because Cena, as much as people like to make fun, let's go Cena sucks, whatever. Yeah. I hear the chants. I'm part of them sometimes. He was a great representative of the business and getting people involved, and bringing families together is not a bad thing, speaking from personal experience. So to have somebody that's going to take the time to represent the company in that way, and that's naturally him too. You can't fake it. There's some superstars who, they'll kill it in the ring for 5 minutes, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a call.
Yeah, no worries.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
But they can deliver in the ring, but then all of a sudden they're backstage and they're being assholes. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that's who you want representing the company out there amongst real people. You want somebody who's going to take the time, who's going to thank people, who's going to just remind people, hey, we appreciate your business, your time, the effort that you took to come out to our event. That's Cody all day. So if they're comparing him to Cena, that's a great comparison. And Cena, by the way, another one. I've spent time with John, and whether it's at a wrestling event or for one of his movies, he takes the time. And there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, no, I think there's something that anyone can learn from the stuff that he does outside of the ring and interacting with the people. I mean, there's more that goes into it than just what you see on screen, obviously, like you said, with the wrestling and really just with anything. And you also talk about, having Kofi on the show and Kevin Owens and people like that. Is there anyone that you've interacted with or friends with, whatever, that you want to see really shine, I guess might be the right word, in this new era of WWE that might not be getting the spotlight on them right now?
Well, anybody that I'm really excited about right now is definitely starting to get their due.
Mm-hmm.
I saw what happened with Drew, and I like Drew. Drew makes me laugh. I talked to him, but he's chatty. He loves to talk,
Mm-hmm.
and I was super excited for him winning. But then I'm like, really? He only gets it for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So I definitely would like to see Drew back. Have more victories. I think he'd be a great champion, but I understand too, how that works. But I'm a big fan of Drew's. I think Seth also. I mean, he's had his, Seth has done incredible things. We're talking about new people. I just want to acknowledge Seth for a second because
Mm-hmm.
he's always been super nice to me, and I can't say enough good things about the guy. I'm watching what LA Knight is doing, man. And LA Knight, he's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. I confronted him too because I hit him up on Instagram and I said, "Hey man, I got a wrestling wall. I would love to have you on that wrestling wall,
Yeah.
if possible." And he goes, "Oh, I'm a big fan too, man. I'll send you a picture." And I gave my info and I never got it. And so at the last, I hit him up. I actually confronted him at the bar. I said, "Let me tell you something, brother." And he goes, "Did you get the stuff?" And I go, "I didn't get no stuff." And so he had his manager right there, and sure as shit, the next day I walked into that arena, and there was not even 10 feet into the arena, some guy walks up to me with a picture, autographed, with a certified card on it, and I hit him up. I go, "Hey man, that was awesome, thank you." So I definitely want to see LA Knight, and he's already got it, so it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, no, that's cool. A lot of these people that you talk about, too, obviously involved in some of the greatest feuds in wrestling history that we're going to be seeing on WWE Rivals, of course. One of those guys, I'm not sure if you'll be covered in this season of the show, but back now, I don't know if you've had much interaction with him in the last, as of late, because he only came back recently, but CM Punk back in WWE. Have you had any interaction with him? Are you a fan of him or not so much?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw him the other night at the, let's see, what was the event? I was at WWE World for the Slammies. I saw him there at the Slammies. We were backstage, and it was really nice to see him. And I told him too. I go, "Hey man," I go, you're home now. We missed you. And
That's
he's
cool.
like, "Man, it's great to be back. It feels great to be back." The last time I saw CM Punk was probably 10 years ago.
Wow.
In Chicago. I ran into him and AJ at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and he remembered too, which I thought was really, really cool.
That is cool.
So, I'm excited to see him back. I was excited when he just came back to wrestling, period.
Yeah.
But now that he's back in the WWE, I'm hoping that after his, arm gets better, that he does have this, because it looks like it's going to be a good feud between him and Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people would like to see that.
I think so. That might be another one of those feuds that we see end up on the show someday. But I mean, cliche question talking about that as we wind down here, Gabe. Just talking about some of your favorite feuds as a wrestling fan, in wrestling over the last number of years throughout your fandom. And there's been so many great ones, obviously, a lot of what you're going to be talking about on the show coming up starting April 21st on A&E, of course. But just some of your favorite feuds in wrestling history.
Ooh, man. For me, I was always a big fan of tag teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I feel like the Road Warriors had some of the greatest feuds with so many top-tier teams, whether it was with the Freebirds or with with the Steiner brothers or with, I want to see more of those because I feel like they're only focusing on singles matches, but some of the tag team feuds were pretty awesome, and the Road Warriors were part of so many. And then finally, well, of course, when them and Demolition met, I was like, oh, we've all been waiting for this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a classic one right there. Tag team feud, that's a deep cut too. I thought you were going to say like Rock and Austin or something like that. That's a good answer.
No, man. I would love to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, I'm just a host. I'm a host. I'm a fan,
That's
I talked
cool,
to Brian.
man.
I was like, hey, what do you think? Well, okay, well, we'll think about it. All right, cool.
Yeah. No, it's awesome, man. You're an awesome addition to the show. I mean, it's a pretty stacked lineup of who's going to be on the show, what you guys are going to be talking about, and you being the host too is really, really cool. So I was excited to see your name attached to it. Just a couple months ago, actually, as we wind down here, I have an 11-year-old sister. We were watching the new second season of the Santa Claus show. So when I told her I was talking to you today, she was very excited. So I just want to let you know that she's a fan as well.
Oh, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. You do great work, man. I look forward to seeing you on the new season of WWE Rivals. Thanks for taking the time, man, and I hope to catch you down the road.
I'll see you at an event.
I look forward to it, man. I know you don't like doing press, so I appreciate taking the time.
But as you could tell, I love talking about wrestling, man. So this wasn't this wasn't an arm twister for me.
I appreciate it. Don't we all? We all love talking about wrestling, so I look forward to next time. Thanks, Fluffy. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Gabe for the time. Like you mentioned earlier, A&E recently wrapping up airing the latest season of WWE Rivals hosted by Gabe, so go back and check out those episodes right now on A&E. Now we throw it to my conversation with Mr. Marceau, breaking down all the latest in the world of wrestling, WWE NXT Battleground Clash of the Castle coming up this weekend, and some more contract talk, as I alluded to earlier. Mr. Marceau, brother, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. I forgot to ask you before we record here, but I know coming up this weekend, obviously, it's Father's Day, Clash of the Castle, good, great, grand. We'll talk about that stuff momentarily. Any expectations of seeing Inside Out 2 at some point? Did you see the first movie?
I have, yeah. The first one's pretty good.
Are you looking forward to seeing the second one? You seem like the type of person that would be like, go see it opening week. Oh, you're going to a wedding this weekend, so actually you're not. So I forgot about that.
Yeah, I have a wedding, but I mean, I think eventually we'll probably see. I mean, Molly really likes the first one, so I assume at some point we'll go see the second one.
Did you end up seeing If? Because I feel like we did see it, and I feel like that's a movie you would really like.
I have not seen it yet. Molly does want to see that as well. But she also wants to see Twister when it comes out, so, I mean, we might have a busy summer here watching movies.
There's a lot of movies coming out. Alexa said the same thing, Twisters. I've actually never seen the first one, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I know, it came out a long time ago. It's supposed to be a classic, but I don't know. Never seen it. I haven't even been on the ride, and they had a ride at Universal for the longest time. I never went on that either. They closed it down a couple years ago, but I think the second movie has absolutely nothing to do with the first one. But I don't even know why you would call it Twisters at that point, but I'm going to have to check out the first one before the second one comes out. But like I said, we had Battleground this past weekend. Pretty solid show. What were your overall impressions of it?
That was a solid show, like you said. I mean, I saw people complaining that, like, the ringside area was too small or something, but, I mean, I thought, like, the crowd seemed pretty, like, on top of it, seemed pretty lively. I thought, like, the matches overall were all good to pretty good, and, I mean, I had no complaints.
What were your overall takes on the UFC Apex Arena? Because you mentioned how the crowd looked a little bit light on one side, but honestly, it looked like a glorified NXT Performance Center, but I thought it was a pretty cool venue, and I wouldn't be upset if they used it again. I don't know about for like TakeOver over Mania weekend next year. I guess they could. I feel like they would just make more money if they run TakeOver or the NXT Live Special, whatever you want to call it, Stand and Deliver, in the same not the same venue as Mania, but like the MGM Grand. They could probably make some money off of that more than they would the UFC Apex. I'm not sure where it is in comparison to that other stuff. But what did you think of the arena itself and how it was lit? And because I thought it was a good venue for NXT specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they do it for UFC, it seems like it's a lot smaller crowd, so maybe that's why it just didn't look as crammed.
Yeah.
As this one did, but at least I think it's like, I mean, it's really close to the action, so I think that as a viewer, I think that'd be like more of a positive. It seems like you're pretty much like on top of the ring, which isn't a bad thing. But no, I think it's like also it's the first time, so maybe they can be like, oh, maybe this didn't really work as well, so maybe they can make some adjustments. But like, so I think doing maybe. I would probably go to either T-Mobile or MGM if they did TakeOver or Stand and Deliver or whatever they call it in Vegas for WrestleMania weekend. I mean, that's definitely closer to where Allegiant Stadium is, where WrestleMania is going to be. I'm pretty sure the UFC Apex is a little bit outside the city, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
But I still think, like I said, I think for the first time it looked well. It's something you can definitely work on, obviously.
Yeah, I think for Stand and Deliver itself, I think it would make the most sense to have it just at MGM Grand because, they at Mania weekend, I wasn't at Stand and Deliver this past year, but I know they sold. It was nearly a sellout, or it was a sellout of like 13,000 tickets. For a modern-day NXT show, that's pretty fucking impressive. So if they can run an arena like that and get people in an arena like that for Mania weekend, assuming the product's as hot next year too, they could probably make pretty good bank on a sold-out MGM Grand as opposed to going back to UFC Apex. I guess they could because they will be back in Vegas, but I think it would just make more sense to do like one of the other arenas in that area, on that strip over there, so I guess we'll see. But the show itself kicked off with Kelani Jordan becoming the inaugural NXT Women's North American Champion in a ladder match. You put a lot of inexperienced women in one ladder match. It sounds like the recipe for disaster, but this ended up being a pretty good matchup. They all held their own. Nothing too dumb. They had some cool spots, but nothing like too egregiously crazy that you'd be like, why would they even attempt that? That could have ended really badly. But no, it ended up being a pretty good match. Sol Ruca, Lash Legend, Fallon Henley, Jada Parker, and Michin were also involved. But it was Jordynne. I got that one wrong. I thought it would be Fallon Henley. I think you did too. But it was Jordynne actually walking out as the new champion. So your thoughts on the match and the fact that Jordynne is the new inaugural, NXT Women's North American Champion?
Yeah, I thought, like you said, with all the inexperience, I expected a little bit more of a car crash, but I think maybe the agent or someone producing the match was like, hey, you should probably keep it pretty simplified. Like, I think, like, the Sol Ruca's, like, her little, whatever her move's called. I can't think of her finisher.
Soul
like,
Snatcher,
that was, like,
yeah.
pretty much the most, what's it called?
Soul Snatcher.
Soul Snatcher. She did two of those, like, one off a ladder in the ring, and then another one. They did throw Lash Legend on a ladder, but, I mean, it's probably one of the safest ladder bumps I've seen in a ladder match in a long time. So, yeah. I think they kept it pretty, like I said, simplified. I think Ruca would win. I did pick Henley. She didn't win here, but, I mean, Kelani Jordan's really good, and, I mean, she has a ton of potential. She's still fairly young. They showed last night that she got signed at that Nashville training that we were at, so, I mean, she's only been in the business for a little more than not even 2 years yet. So, I mean, so far I think she's done well. I think she has a great look, and I think she's decent enough in the ring now. And obviously, I assume she'd get a little bit better as years go by. So, I think as the first inaugural champion, it was a good win for her.
Yeah, I think so. I think she's got great potential. I've been seeing that for a while now. I didn't think they would put the belt on her from the get-go, just because I thought there were some choices in here that I thought they might crown instead. Sol Ruca's kind of been like the uncrowned gem of the undercard, so to speak, of NXT's women's division. So I thought they might go with her as the first champion. Obviously, they didn't. They have Fallon Henley as well. We mentioned her. She's established. They didn't go with her. I mean, that's not to say none of these women can win the championship eventually. They obviously can. Michin was in there kind of bringing the experience. Jada Parker's coming along just fine. She's not great in the ring yet. She's okay. I think her charisma really carries her overall presentation. But Kelani Jordan is a great athlete, and I think she's got that likability about her, where I think she could do really, really well in this division if she continues to show progress, get better, work with women that are more experienced. And she's working with Michin next week, actually, for the NXT Women's North American Championship. So more matches like that, and she'll be on the right track. NXT Championship was defended right after that. Nathan Frazier and Axiom beating the OC. I was 0 for 2 at this point because I thought the OC were winning the belts. I'm not disappointed they didn't. I thought they just might be crowned champions because AJ Styles is challenging for the undisputed WWE Championship coming up this weekend, Clash of the Castle. Thought they might want to crown, maybe not Michin, but at least 3/4 of the OC. I'm not even really sure what the standing is of Michin in the group at this point. I guess she is still a part of it. I don't know. But they did not win the championships here. Nathan Frazier and Axiom are still the NXT Tag Team Champions. Your thoughts in the match, and was it the right call to have Frazier and Axiom retain?
That was a good match. Like you said, I was stunned. I had the OC going over to, and they didn't win here. I was pretty surprised. I mean, I figured, like you said, that they would at least be holding something with AJ going in and, like, maybe kind of pump them up a little bit. Nope, they just fucking lost here. Michin lost as well. I mean, she was with them last night on NXT, so I assume she's still in the group. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, that group's based on life support at this point.
I mean, at this point, yeah, all they do is lose. And I think Gallows and Anderson at this point, I mean, it might be safe to say this was the best match they've had since coming back to the company. I know this was a very basic, average match, But I honestly couldn't tell you a match they've had that was better, because at the same time, they have not wrestled in a fucking year. They never wrestle on TV. They wrestle a little bit on NXT TV, but not all that often. So I'm not exactly sure what to think of them. But the match was okay. I'm glad Frazier and Axiom retained. I like them as a duo. They're kind of due for their own single spotlight, but I think as a team they work well together. Lola Vice and Shayna Baszler entering the NXT Underground. This is the 4th NXT Underground match they've done in the last year. I'm not sure how many of the other ones you've seen, but I think the concept is cool. They removed the ring ropes. I think with these two women, having legitimate MMA backgrounds, it worked well. It was a well-worked match. They took the fight to the outside. It was certainly an upgrade over the Shayna Ronda match that we were there for at SummerSlam last year. And I thought that was a well-worked match too. But, a lot of what they were going for, the fans just didn't care. It did not translate to that audience. If you put Vice and Baszler in the same exact match in front of a WWE crowd, it may have gotten the same reaction as Ronda and Shayna did. I'm not sure. But Shayna, I thought, here looked more vicious. It was, they were just beating the shit out of each other. And the crowd was more into it. They had the people banging on the mats constantly, which I'm not particularly a fan of, but I understand the vibe they're going for. Vice ultimately going over. I didn't love the finish. They kind of made it seem like she won on a fluke win where she pushed Shayna into the fucking steel steps, capitalized by throwing her in the ring, and then choking her out, or punching her from there, rather. Didn't love that. I wish it was a bit more decisive, but they do have Shayna challenging for the tag titles this weekend at Clash, so I kind of get it. But still, the match was what it was. Another nice win for Vice, who has rebounded nicely after cashing in her NXT Women's Breakout Tournament title shot, losing back at Vengeance Day, and now she's back on the right track with beating a main roster star here. So your thoughts on the match, the concept itself, and your kind of potential ceiling that you see for Lola Vice, and how far you see her going in NXT and beyond.
Yeah, I think the match itself I thought was good. Like you said, I've seen the other ones. I just think specifically with this match compared to Ronda and Shayna, like this had like the right aura, like the presentation was done correctly. Like you said, the dim lighting, they took the ropes down. It seemed more of a fight. The Ronda and Shayna was just like I guess like MMA rules, but like it was in a wrestling ring in front of a ton of people and just like fish out of water. No one really wanted to see it anyways. So I just feel like that's why that kind of failed. I mean, like you said, depending on if they did this same thing with these two at SummerSlam, it would probably been the same thing, just because the presentation just really wasn't there. But I thought this was done well. Glad that Lola Vice won. Like you said, wish she kind of beat her more decisively to the steel steps, and then she kind of like hammer fisted her, and then the referee jumped in for the save. But she's also, like you said, going for a tag team title shot. You don't want to like look too bad, and then she won it on Raw anyway. So I guess she kind of gloss over that, especially people that aren't watching NXT. But I like Vice a lot. Like I said, I think they've also kind of revamped her since she lost. I kind of was worried once she lost her cash in, and I think they've done very well with her. And I think she has a pretty good high ceiling in NXT. I don't think she'll be the one to beat Roxanne, but I think they've done well by her.
I think they could put the championship on her. I think ultimately they could put the NXT Women's North American Championship on her, because Kelani Jordan is there. She's the current champion. I wouldn't beat her. She just won the belt 3 days ago, so I wouldn't beat her anytime soon. I know they're teasing Jada Parker as a challenger, which they should go to at some point. I'm fine with that. I think Lola Vice could be the one to beat her. I know you mentioned Roxanne. She's probably not beating Roxanne. Roxanne is also a heel. She's probably facing... We'll talk about that, but I don't think she's facing Lola Vice again. She's already faced her, gone for her. I don't think that's happening. But yeah, what do you think? Could you see Lola Vice as the next NXT Women's North American Champion at some point down the road?
Yeah, I think she could be the perfect person to beat Kelani at this point. Like, obviously, I would hold it a little bit longer. But like so, like Jada, Lash Legend, a couple of other women, they're just not ready, honestly. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it on them yet, but I think Vice at the point that she could be the one to be the first person to beat Jordynne for the belt. Yeah,
I'd be totally fine with that. NXT North American Championship, Obafemi beating Wesley and Joe Coffey in the triple threat. Obafemi already overcame the triple threat formula back at Stand and Deliver, facing Dijak and Josh Briggs. This was not as good of a match, but it was still a very good match with three guys that can go. Wesley and Joe Coffey have been around for a long time, obviously. They work well together, fun match. Femi, I think, was the real standout of the match, as he was at Stand and Deliver. The guy is a lot better than I thought he would be by this stage, because I had told you in January or December, whenever he won, I think it was January, when he won the NXT North American Championship after winning his men's breakout tournament, respectively, He cashed in the title shot, beat Dragon Lee that night. And I was really surprised because I'm thinking this guy isn't ready. Because they had him on an NXT show about a year ago. He had like a big debut, and then they never featured him again until this past year. And it didn't really seem like he seemed very limited, and he was a bigger guy, but I'm like, don't rush him to the title shot, to the title win, and they did. But honestly, he has surpassed my expectations. He seems like a guy that they could really build around and make an original star on that show if he continues to get better. So not only your assessment of the match, but your assessment of the progress and development of Omofemi so far as how far he's come in the last couple of months.
I thought it was a good match. All three guys can work. I thought they worked well. They had the Gallus interference. End of the day, Femi just overpowered them, but he's just a beast. He's surprisingly good for how long he's been in the business. His strength is ridiculous. They got a blue chipper to steal a line with GSM. They got a blue chipper and Omofemi. I mean, for the lack of experience, he's really good for what his experience level is. And I mean, I thought putting the belt on him was like, oh god, they really gonna just push this guy. Like you said, we hadn't really seen a ton of him, but he's impressed every time I've seen him. So I think they've hit gold with Omofemi. I mean, he's strong. He's a good worker. He kind of has like that aura. I mean, he kind of has everything.
He kind of seems like what Braun Breaker was to NXT 2.0 when it first started about 2.5-3 years ago, when everyone was like, wow, man, this guy's actually better than he probably should be at this stage. And, we don't really know about the promos. The promos are still a work in progress for Femi, and Breaker's promos are still a work in progress even all these years later. But even Breaker had the built-in, not excuse, but like the guy's a second-generation star, and he has family that are wrestlers, obviously that being the Steiners. Femi, to my knowledge, is not a second-generation star, has no connections to wrestling prior to debuting just last year. He's a former athlete of the NIL program, blah, blah, blah. He also may have been signed from the Nashville tryout for all that we know. I don't know if he was or not, but I know he's been signed in the last year or two. But yeah, he's a guy that has just gotten very good very quickly. And I think he's someone that you'll be seeing as a top star on the main roster at some point. I don't know, in the not-too-distant future, but they should definitely take their time with him and not rush him up. But I think you would agree that he could probably be a main player on the main roster at some point, right?
I would say within the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, it could be even quicker than that, depending on how they book him in NXT and the opportunities they give him. Because I think so far as North American champion, he's had a much better run than I personally was expecting. So I'm eating my hat on that one. I'll tell you that much. Where originally I wasn't too high on him winning the championship as quickly as he did, but so far the run has been pretty solid overall, all things considered. After that, what was the match they had after that? Oh, obviously Roxanne Perez, Jordynne Grace for the NXT Women's Championship. The TNA Knockouts Champion Challenge and the NXT Women's Champion. Never thought we would see the day. It happened on Sunday. A great match. Easily the best thing on the entire show to me. I wish they got a little bit more time, and I did not love the overbooked finish, and a lot of people complained about it. But I understand why they wanted to do that, because they wanted to protect Jordynne in defeat, not have her lose clean, because she's this other company's champion. I get why they did what they did. And it wasn't completely, stupid either. I mean, it was kind of dumb, but they did what they did to set up what will likely be an NXT wrestler answering the open challenge from Jordynne Grace, coming up on Friday at the TNA pay-per-view against all odds. It will very likely be Tatum Paxley, like we talked about last week, answering the open challenge from Jordynne Grace, challenging the TNA Knockouts champion. We had Dana Brooke making an appearance here on the show, stopping Tatum Paxley. That's what led to Jordynne going outside the ring to stop both women, which is what led to Roxanne Perez capitalizing and laying around and winning the match. Dana Brooke was not Dana Brooke, by the way. She was Ash by Elegance, her new name in TNA, which was fucking funny. And she got literally no reaction either from the people in the audience, which I thought was just amazing. Because the last time we saw her in WWE was only 9 months ago, and obviously the absence makes the heart grow fonder, but that absence was not long enough. She was in the company for 10 years. She's not been gone long enough for this return to even really matter. Under a new name, who gives a shit? It's not like she's really been lighting the world on fire in TNA too. She's got a decent character, but her in-ring stuff is pretty much the same. But anyway, so your take on the match, Roxanne Perez winning the finish and kind of everything else that went on here.
Yeah, it was a really fun match. Like you said, I feel like I wish we got a little bit more out of this. And the overbooking, I think we saw that coming. Obviously, with another company's champion, you're not going to have them lose clean. So, the match of itself was probably the best match on the show. I mean, Roxanne's really good. Jordynne Grace is really good. Dana Brooke, I died laughing when I saw her. I died because Vic Joseph was like, "That's another Dash Boy." I'm like, "We don't do this."
Yeah.
She's, like you said, the crowd literally gave two shits. But at the end of the day, I'm happy Roxanne won. I'm assuming Pax would be the one that answered the open challenge. And I guess we'll see what else comes out of this, like a little TNA, NXT working relationship. But I thought this was a really, really fun match.
What's funny about the Dana Brooke appearance is that, like I said, not only was she in WWE for almost a decade, especially on TV, she was the last time we had seen her on TV. It's not like she wasn't on the shows at all, like prior to being released. Right before she was released, she was on WWE TV. She was on NXT. She was on NXT literally 8 and 9 months ago. So it's not like she's been gone for years and it's like, oh, this big return. She was just there. People definitely did not forget about. I mean, I kind of forgot about her, but you know, you would think she would have got a bigger reaction, but I thought it was funny that she didn't. Maybe a TNA original that we don't typically see in WWE or haven't seen in WWE before probably would have gotten a better reaction. But, you know, it was what it was. It was still a decent moment. And Roxanne Perez winning as she should. You mentioned the NXT TNA partnership, where else it goes from here. We found out on NXT last night they're going to be holding a battle royal to determine Trick Williams' next challenger, very likely for the Great American Bash. Or I'm sorry, it's not the Great American Bash, it's Heatwave actually, because it can't be the Great American Bash because they're going to be in Canada for that show. So that's why they're not doing it as the Great American Bash. But they're doing Heatwave. They're determining the next challenger via a battle royal next week. And they even teased maybe some other locker rooms, other men from other locker rooms might be getting involved in the battle royal. So we got to expect probably at least 1 or 2 TNA names in said battle royal, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, they could have people from Raw and SmackDown in there, but I would think you can't just say that and then have friggin' Apollo Crews show up. I mean, you can, but I mean, you also have to have at least one TNA person that the crowd would know, the crowd would pop for. They have to. I mean, I feel like it would be dumb not to. But as far as Roxanne Perez, what do you think is next for her? They had a whole bunch of women come out last night to close out the show, and I was excited too because they closed the show with her segment, and it can't get much higher than bringing in another company's champion. That was pretty shocking. So I'm thinking, how are they planning to top that by having the segment close the show? And then Lola Vice came out. They had Lash Legend come out. They had all these other women come out. All heels, by the way. Every single woman that was out there was a heel. And I'm thinking, like, why did this close the show? Because they didn't really end on a decisive note. They didn't announce, like, a multi-woman match to determine a number one contender. It was just that segment. They all interrupted each other and they brawled a little bit, and that was it. I just wasn't a fan of it. I thought Julia might come out or be announced on the screen as Roxanne's next challenger for Heatwave, which has been the rumor for a while now, but they did not go in that direction. So where do you think they go next with Roxanne Perez as the NXT Women's Champion?
This was the most head-scratching moment for a main event on NXT, like a segment I've had in a long time. I was bought in. Like you said, I thought, like, okay, we're going to probably get, like, Julia either here or she'll be on the screen because, like, she has, like, this little feud with Ava. Like, so I figured Ava would be like, oh, stick one to you. You're going to have to face Julia next. But then, like, she came out, so I'm like, okay, here we go. And then all of a sudden it's like, here comes JC Jane and Nix, and then here comes Lash Legend and Jackson, and then I'm like, why? And like you said, they're all heels. So it didn't even make sense. Then Vice and Roxanne cleared the ring, and it ended like that. Like there wasn't anything like teased more than that. Nothing else. Like it was kind of head scratching, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. Especially with it ending the show, I figured we would get something like newsworthy. We'd find out who our next challenger is. Nope, we just had 6 heels just fighting, and that was about it. And Ava's just standing there. I mean, I was stunned, honestly. I was actually kind of pissed. I was like, this is what we got? Like, this is the end of the show. You figured to get something that's, like you said, an announcement, something newsworthy. You got nothing.
No, I think they had actually better stuff on the show than that, so I don't even really know why they closed the show with it. I was pissed, too. The show ends. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I was waiting for, like, a post-credit scene or something. They've done that in NXT quite a few times. They didn't even do that. And I was kind of disappointed that they didn't close off with something more exciting. maybe they are still building to Julia. I have to imagine they'll probably be doing Julia and Roxanne on that show. I know she had a wrist injury, and people were thinking maybe that'll delay her debut, which is very possible. They might save her for a little bit further down the road. They could go with Lola Vice in the meantime. But if they are, I would not have had that closing and close the show. I think people had higher hopes for who would be revealed as their next challenger. And I hope it's none of those women, because I have no desire to see any of those women challenge Roxanne anytime soon. We've already seen Roxanne and Lola, honestly. I know Lola's got more momentum now, but she's not going to win the belt, and not a match I really want to see right now. JC Jane I really just don't care about. Lash Legend's even worse. I mean, these are all weak options, so hopefully it does end up being Julia or someone better. She's beaten a couple main roster talent, like Natalya and Chelsea Green. Not exactly top of the barrel here, more bottom of the barrel on the main roster, but, it's still better than some of these other women in NXT. Hopefully we'll find out soon, but I thought that was a very weird segment, like you said, to close the show last night. Trick Williams and Ethan Page headlining for the NXT Championship. What was a pretty decent matchup. Both guys looking good, having solid showings, and Williams in the end coming out on top, still the NXT Champion as we expected. Your thoughts on the matchup and what you thought of Ethan Page in an NXT in-ring debut on Sunday?
I thought it was a solid match. I like what I saw out of Ethan Page. I will see what happens here. I hope he's not kind of like the next Sean Spears. He just comes in and then he's kind of just like mid-card for NXT. I mean, yeah. I hope they actually see something in him and kind of give him a little push, and maybe he'll go to the main roster. But I think he has the tools to just kind of in the presentation alone. I like Trick. I mean, I didn't think Trick would lose, and he didn't. So, solid match. I thought the women's match was better. But for his first match in NXT, I thought it was a solid main event. But it's just all particularly on the booking, because they book him like Sean Spears, people will just not care about him in 3 weeks.
Yeah, no, that's the key, because I think he went to the very top of the card from the get-go by going for the NXT Championship, which worked, because I think this match was a far better matchup to do than Trick Williams and fucking Noam Dar for the NXT Championship, which was originally teased for a few weeks, and they went in a different direction. So they got to have Trick continue to work with former main roster talent or experienced talent like Ethan Page. Noam Dar I don't give a shit about, so please don't put Noam Dar in that spot. But people like that, though, because that's the only way Trick is going to get better and have better matches. His matches are not amazing. He's had some really good matches so far. Some matches more like this are more in the middle / average. It only was a 12-minute main event, so really nothing out of the ordinary. I wouldn't have wanted it to go much longer because it doesn't really need to. But, Ethan Page, I thought looked good in his NXT in-ring debut, and we'll see where they go with him next. I imagine he will be in that Battle Royal next week, and like you said, hopefully he does not become next Sean Spears, who, at this point, Spears was never going to be a player being back in NXT, but he's lost so many matches, it's hard to care about the guy at this point. I mean, he won last night, actually, but that guy Javon Evans, who was really good, but, beyond that, he's lost a majority of his matches so far, more so 50-50 booking with him than the other people on the roster. But that's Sean Spears' spot at this point. I mean, he's, at the end of it, not the end of his career, but definitely in the latter half. Ethan Page has a lot more to offer as a future main roster talent, so hopefully he can rebound from this loss in the coming weeks. But I thought overall it was a good show. Nothing too eventful outside of the inaugural NXT Women's North American Champion being crowned at the beginning of the show. I thought the other women's match stole the show, that being Perez and Grace. And I forgot about Vice and Baszler, too. So they had 3 women's matches on the show, which was cool. Half the card was women. They had more women in action than they did men, actually, if you look at the body count here. But overall, it was a good show, and they kind of set the stage nicely for next month's Heatwave show, which is going to be coming up the same weekend as Money in the Bank. Before we get to, I want to ask you about Clash of the Castle a little bit later on. 2 things from the last week that kind of broke that we didn't have a chance to discuss. One obviously being the big story of the past week, and we're still discussing it now, Ricochet giving notice to WWE. We talked about Ricochet last week as far as the contracts expiring, where we see him ending up, and we both said him staying in WWE. And then Saturday evening comes, and it's reported that Ricochet has already given notice to WWE at the end of his current contract. He intends to leave, and then we see him on Raw kind of confirming that departure by being absolutely destroyed by Braun Breaker backstage. So we'll kind of analyze this here and do a deeper dive on it, but your overall reaction to Ricochet saying, hey, listen, I don't want to re-sign, and him being on his way out of the company.
I'm stunned, honestly. I think I guess maybe sees himself at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
I think with WWE specifically right now, he's strictly mid-card. And I mean, I think under Triple H, he's been booked better. I mean, the people that say that they wasted him, I mean, he had a pretty good WWE career so far. I wouldn't say he was wasted. I just guess maybe you had higher expectations for him. But, I mean, for what he does and what his limitations are, I think he's been booked pretty well. I mean, he's very good in the ring. He can do all the moves, but his mic skills are very limited still. And that's in WWE specifically. If you want to be a top guy, you kind of have to talk.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I feel like that was always his limitation, and it has never really gotten to another level, and that's not everyone's a great talker. And I guess he, like I said, maybe he's betting on himself. I mean, I think he could go to AEW. I think if you want like TNA, maybe be treated a little bit better. But I mean, AEW, I just feel like they have so many guys like him who probably can talk better than he can. So I don't really see what like the difference is. I think, like I said, maybe he's gonna go somewhere else. I don't know how hot independent wrestling is right now, but I mean, clearly taking a bet on himself, and maybe he can kind of revitalize himself. But I think the talking is what's really keeping him back, and I don't think going to Indies is really going to change that. So very surprised when I saw that he gave his notice, but I mean, good for him if he's not satisfied with what he's doing and wants to do something else.
Listen, he's a guy that we've been high on for a really long time, dating back to Lucha Underground. Is Prince Puma, obviously. He was under the mask over there. Didn't do a lot of talking. I think he honestly left the promos to Conan and other people that he was aligned with on the show at the time. He didn't really do, excuse me, he didn't do a lot of promos. He didn't cut a lot of promos. He was really more of a action guy. He was more of a wrestler type dude. So we've been high on him since that point. And I know you had said back then, even 10 years ago, that was someone you wanted to see in WWE at some point. He came to WWE overall having a pretty decent run. North American champion, IC champion, United States champion. A lot of these runs not really lasting all that long, but still, all things considered, pretty decent run in WWE. But when he comes in 10 years ago, he didn't come in 10 years ago. He came in 6 years ago in 2018. I guess this was my thought. I have to go back and check the archives and kind of see what we thought back then, because he obviously was a massive signing for WWE. And I hate when people say, oh, WWE failed him, or oh, he had a failure of a run. I mean, I don't know what to me, a failure of a run is what the fuck happened to someone like an EC3 who came in and they did absolutely nothing with the second time after he already had success in TNA and he was fired within like 2 or 3 years. That to me is a failure. I'm talking more about people like Ricochet who came in, had success, could he have been at a higher level? Sure. But like if Shinsuke Nakamura were to be released tomorrow or were to leave, I would say the same thing about him. I don't think he's a failure either. He's had enough success, has probably made a lot of money, and has been happy enough, content long enough to where he's definitely not a failure. Could he have been a world champion? Sure. But with Ricochet, though, in your opinion, do you think he's a guy that you were expecting to become world heavyweight champion or a world champion here in WWE? Or do you think he kind of ended up in the spot where we always envisioned him at as a mid-card, or maybe a bit higher up on the mid-card, but I feel like this is probably the best he could do given his lack of mic skills, like you said. And he's not a terrible talker, but he definitely could be better, though.
Yeah, I mean, like you kind of pointed it out. I think, I would love to know what we said back in the day. I just feel like the time I'm pretty sure we only had one world championship, so I mean, I don't think I would ever say at that point, like, oh, he's going to be WWE champion. Like, depending on, I think mid-card was probably where we projected him, because I think we knew he could do all the moves, but the mic skills just really weren't there, and the size especially because Vince was in charge at the time.
Yeah.
Just obviously doesn't have the size. I mean, even fucking Rey Mysterio, like, how great he's been. Like, not like he ever had these memorable, like, world title runs. Like, held the belt a couple times, but they all were terrible reigns. So,
yeah.
But no, I think like you said, for nothing. I mean, I think people saying he's a failure, like, yeah, maybe could have been featured in the mid-card maybe a little bit more prominently. Yeah, but I mean, he won the belt, won IC title, North American, United States. I mean, since Triple H's been taken over, he's been all over the show. I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time on Raw I didn't see Ricochet. So, I think it's silly to say he had a failure. Could he have been booked better? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much anyone. That's not like world champion or 1%er realistically in WWE. I mean, anyone technically could be booked better. I mean, it's just the way it is. But for like you said, for his flaws or his setbacks, I mean, I don't think they did it wrong by him.
No, they could have booked him better at several points, because like you said, when Vince was in charge, especially, he was completely underutilized. I mean, he is one of the best high flyers, if not the best high flyer in the world. And for a long period of time, when he first came into the company, like NXT had a great run. When he first started on the main roster, it was okay. But like by late 2019, 2020, 2021, when this guy is fucking losing to Brock in 90 seconds, he's out there working main event. And he's not even on Raw. He's working with Rector fucking Bushin. Or he's working with Riddick Moss for the 24/7 championship. That was when it was like, all right, this guy might be damaged goods. He's a loser. The company clearly sees nothing in him. It wasn't really until Triple H took over that they started to showcase him more, put him on the show more, had him win a couple tournaments, the World Cup, teaming with Braun, which worked out well. They were a decent little team. Like I said, winning a few different championships in the last couple of years. Again, no too great of a run. Like, he could have been a better Intercontinental champion, but he's certainly been showcased under Triple H. There was a period like late last year where he wasn't on the show for a couple months for whatever reason. I don't know if he was hurt or something like that. But beyond that, though, I mean, he's been all over the show for quite a while. As a regular, winning a fair amount of matches, never really getting beyond a certain level. He was always destined to be just a stepping stone type guy. But honestly, and I said something, I don't know if I said the opposite last week. I think I definitely said last week I don't see him leaving. There's another reason why, because you kind of mentioned it yourself. If he were to go to AEW, his spot in the company isn't really changing all that dramatically, and which is true, and I stand by that. If he were to go to AEW tomorrow, he is not that much better off than he currently is in WWE. But I think the bigger positive of him leaving, I don't know what his financial situation like is exactly, but I think he could probably make, honestly, as much money elsewhere, just through doing independence, being as hot as he probably will be when he leaves WWE, as he was in WWE, making as much money, that is. Especially when it comes to signing with AEW and probably doing New Japan and Indies and shit like that. And he's free to work anywhere he wants as soon as his contract expires, whether that's next month or August or next week, I don't know. But I think he's a guy that could really make a name for himself, and I think we probably will see him back in WWE, honestly, from in another couple of months down the road, or not couple months, I'm sorry, a couple of years down the road. The guy's 35, so I think if he were to stay with WWE for another 3 to 5 years, what more, honestly, could he really do in WWE that he hasn't already done already? Like, he's worked with all the big names for the most part. He won both mid-card belts. He's an established guy, but he's not climbing up. Like, I saw someone say a couple weeks ago, well, maybe he can win Money in the Bank. I don't know what fucking show you're watching. He's clearly never going to win Money in the Bank, but because he's just not that guy. He's not a world champion type guy, at least not in WWE. Maybe in TNA or something. I don't even see that happening in AEW. But honestly, I don't hate the idea for him to leave, because I think, like you said, he's betting on himself, and he's a guy that could probably make a lot of money and have a lot of fun matches outside of WWE. Now, could he end up on Rampage in 6 months from now, contending for the TNT Championship? Probably. But I can't say it's much worse than the spot he finds himself in currently, which is why I'm not really against the idea of him leaving.
No, yeah, I agree. I think if that, like I said, if he's not where he wants to be, I think leaving's probably the best option, but I just don't think he really has that big of a ceiling to like go any further than he currently is. Like, and there's maybe independently, but I mean, he's kind of like a mid card at this point.
At this point, he certainly is. I think there wasn't much more they could have done. Like, when he first came to the main roster 5 years ago, yes, they could have booked him better. He could have been more of an attraction for WWE. He just wasn't. They never really booked him at that seriously of a level, and that was a mistake. But I think it's unfair to say that they failed him. I mean, honestly, his mic skills have really held him back more than anything. And he was over at certain points, and he had momentum, and they did nothing with it. So that certainly is WWE's fault, Vince's fault, whatever. But honestly, during the Triple H era, what more could they really have done with them in the last 2 years that they haven't already done? Like I said, he's been, like you said too, he's been on the show a fair amount. He's won a decent amount of matches. But at the same time, it's like, oh, we never got like a significant title run. Yeah, I mean, I guess they could have done that, but at the same time, though, they have so many people on their roster right now that I would rather see showcased. At this point, Ricochet feels like they've kind of taken him for granted. So if he were to leave and come back, he might be in a better spot than he was in previously. So who knows, you know?
No, yeah, I agree.
I don't know if he's going to improve his stock that much, but, you know, I mean, I think he, at least for the initial year or so when he leaves WWE, unless he re-signs at the last minute, all of this could be for nothing. He could re-sign next week, and then we're just talking about this for nothing. I would be very surprised if that was the case. And I also don't think WWE should turn around and offer him 5 years ago, like when the OC was rumored to leave. AJ wasn't going anywhere, but Gallows and Anderson were clearly on their way out, and they offered them a lot of money, not $1 million, maybe collectively, but individually it was a lot of money. And that was just a waste because they're not worth that amount of money. So with Ricochet, they have to know where they're willing to spend with him and not just offer him $1 million just to stay there, because that would be stupid. To do what? To have him job out to the next Braun Breaker? I mean, that's silly. So I feel like his spot right where it is right now is probably his ceiling. But he can go, enjoy that ceiling in another company for a couple years and maybe come back down the road, because they usually do. And even if he doesn't, that's fine too. But we can maybe get that Will Ospreay match at some point. People have talked about that. That should be insane. Maybe at All In. We spoke last week what they're doing with Ospreay right now and challenging for the championship at Forbidden Door. I think he probably will run it back with Swerve at All In and win the championship there. So I don't think we get Ricochet and Ospreay at All In. But I guess it's possible. I guess they could do it there if they wanted to. But I do think Ricochet will be All Elite at some point and hopefully rep it up in the Indies in the meantime. But another name that was kind of in the news this past week, not talked about nearly as much, but I did want to bring it up. Penta El Zero Miedo, about a week ago, right after we finished recording, it was reported that his contract will be coming up with AEW in the next couple of months. We talked a lot about the WWE contracts coming due, a lot of contracts coming due this year, because a lot of people signed 5-year deals back in 2019. Penta's deal, he probably signed a 5-year deal when he signed in 2019, coming up in August or September. No word on Phoenix. His deal is probably stretched out or delayed because he had so many injuries and they probably tacked on time to the end of it, blah, blah, blah. But Penta's contract specifically is up in the fall. Now, WWE is rumored to have interest, and I had even seen, and I forgot where it was, that I think Penta's trying to secure the rights to his name. Not just the Penta El Zero Miedo name, but also Pentagon Jr., which I think is currently owned by AAA. So if he were to go to WWE, he has the ability to use it there as well. So I don't know if that means he's serious about going to WWE. I don't see it. I think he stays right where he is. But you talk about ceilings and whatnot, he's probably late 30s at this point, if not early 40s. But I know, we talk about Lucha people. He was a Lucha Underground original. He had a great run over there. Really hasn't reached that same ceiling in AEW at all. I kind of envision a better run for him, honestly, and we really haven't seen that so far. So your thoughts on Penta? Could we see him in WWE? Is that something you'd be intrigued by and intrigued to see at some point down the road, or not so much?
Yeah, I just don't feel like he's a WWE guy at the end of the day. They also have a ton of luchadors or Mexican talent right now that I feel like they're focusing on, and not that he'd take a lot away from it. I don't know. I feel like I'd rather just continue to invest in what you have, and I like Penta, but I just don't really see him as a WWE guy.
You're saying that you don't want to see him, this is what I don't want to see. You don't want to see him sign to WWE and just be put as another member of the LWO or Legado, which is probably what they're bound to do as opposed to
please don't do that. Yeah, no thank you.
Listen, I like the idea of an Andrade Santos feud, but you just can't have all of your Mexican talent in one storyline. People have been complaining about that for a while, WWE. In some circumstances, I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, it's not that big of a deal. Here, it's kind of annoying, though. Andrade is just going from one thing to the next. Can we just have one of these people not involved with the other? Do we need to have an LWO Legado feud faction, having him join one of these groups? I don't think you need to do that with every Latino talent on the roster. I just feel like that's too lazy.
No, I agree. Getting to the point, it's getting to the point. It's kind of it's lazy and annoying at this point.
Yeah, they could be doing more with someone like an Andrade or someone along those lines, as opposed to just putting him into another group where I like the idea of a Santos, not Pentas, that too, I guess, Santos and Andrade feud, but just to have him tease to join Legado, it's dude, come on, we don't need to be doing this. That feels a little too on the nose for me personally. But we get to Clash at the Castle coming up this weekend. It's coming up on June. Today is the 12th, right? Today's the 12th, 13th. Coming up on for Saturday, June 15th. Pretty complete card for Clash at the Castle. Let's get into it here. Unless they add any more matches, it's going to be a 5-match card. So, which is along the same lines as King and Queen of the Ring, and it's going to be along the same lines as Backlash as well. But Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre is the main event. We'll save that for last. WWE Women's Tag Team titles, Bianca Jade versus Fire and Dawn versus Shayna and Zoe. WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Who you got going over here?
I mean, I don't think Jade and Bianca really need the belts. I mean, I think the belts for the 7th month in a row are as meaningful as the belt around my waist right now. I don't see either team beating them, so I'm just going to go with Jade and Bianca, but I just really hope they get rid of the belts.
Yeah, I think they're just obviously a proper vehicle to further the storyline with Bianca and Jade. So, I mean, I guess they could put the belts on Fire and Dawn here for a nice hometown reaction, but I don't think anyone in the States would give a shit. So I'm not really, and I like Fire a lot. We've talked about that quite a bit, but I don't see a title change here. So I guess I'm gonna go Bianca and Jade as well, even though the belts don't really mean much anyway. Sami Zayn and Chad Gable for the Intercontinental Championship. Is this where Gable finally becomes champion, or does Zayn retain again?
Zayn retains again.
You think so? Is this where we get the Otis turn, though?
I think so.
I think this is where Otis turns on Gable, and that's what cost him the championship. They could do a finish where he turns on him, but it accidentally cost Zayn the title. But I feel like that would, I don't know, that might be too convoluted. I would like to see it, but I don't think
it's counterproductive.
Yeah, and they've also kind of done that already, where Otis teased turning on Gable and then laid out Sami. Sami's been laid out so often lately, which makes me think he's retaining here. So I think Gable should become champion. He really should, but I just don't. I don't see it happening. I would love to see it happen. It's not impossible, but I'm not expecting it. Bayley, Piper, and Evan for the WWE Women's Championship. I think it's safe to say Bayley's retaining, right?
Upset alert, JK. Bayley wins, LOL. I mean, I like Piper, but it's the one thing with these like premium live events that they have that are in like these foreign countries. They keep giving like the local people on the show and like an opportunity, but they literally have zero chance to win. It's kind of counterproductive, if you ask me, but it is what it is at this point.
Well, it's nice to see that they're showcasing someone like Piper. I think the key is obviously following up with someone like her and continuing to do more with her after the show is over, which they won't and haven't, so I get that. I totally get it, but, you know, at least it's a fresh match. I think the match will be good. I really liked her promo on SmackDown last week, despite the fact the crowd tried to ruin it with the dumbass what chants, but I think the match will be good, if nothing else. Cody Rhodes, AJ Styles, and I Quit match for the Undisputed WWE Championship. I want to see the feud extend. I thought they might do that with like a DQ, but you can't really do that in a match like this. So I think Cody Rhodes wins because unless they bring Cody's baby Liberty out there and Brandy, maybe Pharaoh and AJ like threatens to, I don't know, inflict harm on him or something, I don't think Cody's saying I quit. So I think Cody retains here.
Cody's going to retain.
I don't really think I guess AJ could become champion on a fluke thing, but we already saw the fluke thing in the I Quit match the last time with Edge and Balor when Edge quit because Judgment Day was going to attack Beth Phoenix, his wife. So I guess they could run that back. That would also be lazy. So I think AJ loses here and Cody moves on to his next challenger, going on into Money in the Bank. And then finally, Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre for the World Heavyweight Championship. We found out on Raw this week the Judgment Day will be banned from ringside. No, barred from ringside will be the Judgment Day. Does Damian Priest retain, or does Drew get his moment? Because I could see this one going either way.
I think Drew needs to win. To me, Drew needs to win. I'm not a big fan of Damian anyway, so I'm just going to keep pushing for Drew to win. If he loses again, it kind of he just needs to win. I feel like just kind of solidify himself. Losing again wouldn't look great, especially with the Judgment Day not being there. I could only imagine how he'd lose. So I'm going with Drew. I think it's the right move. I've not really been a huge fan of Damian's run, but I think Drew should win here.
I mean, they got to have at least one Scottish person running the show, right? I mean, they're going to go in there and have all the Scotland people lose? I think Damian's going to win. I do. I think because we haven't seen Punk in a month, and I think Punk will show up. It's so, predictable, but I think Punk will cost Drew the win. I mean, I don't know why Drew wouldn't see that coming, because he did the exact same thing at Mania, kind of. Why would he not see that coming again? It would be nice if he thwarted that and beat Priest for the belt, but then Drew's got to lose the belt before SummerSlam, because are we going to get Drew and Gunther at SummerSlam for the World Heavyweight Championship? It's kind of a mess right now. We talked about it a few weeks ago. But you're sticking with Drew, though.
Yep.
I'm going to go Damian. I think they will have all the Scottish people lose on the show. Unless they throw a bone to Fire and Dawn, I think they're going to have all the Scottish people lose, which is such a Vince McMahon thing. I know Triple H is obviously in charge now, but that screams of Vince booking, but I just don't see any of those people winning. I just don't. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll talk about it next week here on the show, and we'll have a full-on review of Clash of the Castle next Thursday. So until then, new episodes available on all the usual podcast platforms. Enjoy the weekend, brother. Enjoy your wedding weekend, or at least try to, and I'll catch you right back here next Thursday.
Sounds good. Take care, brother.
See you, brother. You too.
Join Graham, GSM Matthews, and RJ Marceau every Thursday as they run down their weekly wrestling rants, offer expert analysis, host exclusive interviews, and more. Subscribe today on all your favorite podcast platforms and never miss an episode of WrestleRant Radio.